We're seeing a lot more conflict over natural resources. We're seeing evictions. We're seeing conflicts, which Elias will talk about, I think, tomorrow on Wednesday, so I won't go into it. There's conflict between livestock keepers and farmers, so over land and water and distribution of land. The quality of the environment is declining and will consequently affect the revenues from different sectors. And therefore, what is key is for government to understand better these policy failures and address them. And the only way that they can address them if there's continued pressure being applied and continued information being supplied. So, is it that bad? There is hope on the horizon. In the forestry sector, what is encouraging is after more than 10 years of deliberation and thinking and delaying, the Tanzania Forest Services, long overdue, is now in existence. And basically what that means is that the forestry sector now is allowed by government to retain most of its revenues and to begin to reinvest in forestry. Whereas previously, whatever they got, they just took it straight to Treasury and just got a mere pittance. And so maybe I'm not surprised that they would only take 10% and pocket the other 90%. The wildlife, and as a consequence of that also, the Tanzania forestry policy has recently been reviewed. The wildlife sector, the Tanzania Wildlife Authority is on the drawing board, and maybe within a year or so, it should also be on the ground. And hopefully, it will also be able to function better. My only concern is this shouldn't turn out to be old wine in new bottles. The water policy has been recently reviewed, and indeed it's one of the better natural resources policies to date. And despite problems of availability of water, we aren't seeing the problem manifesting itself in that level of seriousness. And partly because we're seeing that the water sector is trying much better than previously in terms of water resources management. The Mining Act, as I said, is in an advanced stage of being created, and it's to rectify all the shortcomings. There's a lot of pressure by civil society organizations and NGOs to hold government to apply environmental impact assessments properly, and also strategic environmental assessment. After a lot of deliberation and pressure, the Tanzania Constitution is up for review, and this is a good thing for natural resources management because as it stands, it allows a lot of room for the wrong things to happen. Generally, within the country, tolerance for corruption, mediocrity is really waning. And we're beginning to see that in terms of the media becoming extremely outspoken. The media and civil society organizations are already becoming engaged in the constitution review process even before the process has actually started. So they said, whether you're going to say we're starting today or tomorrow, we're just going to go ahead. You'll find us at the end of the road. The last parliamentary session that we had in Tanzania had 4 MPs kicked out for speaking very vocally against corruption. And this is continuing to happen. We're seeing MPs on both sides of the field within the same ruling party and the opposition. There are power shifts happening within the politics. What's most significant is that this year, the large mining companies have voluntarily decided to sign into the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. And the reason for that is they've realized that with all the clashes that they've had with local communities, with the poor type of contractual agreements that they've had, it's not doing themselves a favor. They've had to spend a lot more money into security. They've had to spend a lot of money into image cleaning and so on, so that they've finally realized that it's better to have good social and environment corporate responsibilities and just be transparent about it. And the dialogue in climate change is continuing, but more is required. So what do we require now? One of our major weaknesses, and I note that IID, again, you have some links with what we call local government, is our decentralized natural resources management is in a very poor state. We need to have districts not only to have authority, but also the resources and the capacity to manage. They now have the authority, but they don't have the resources and they don't have the capacity. So we need to see a major change in this particular area. And again, we need to see a lot more focus pursuing corruption and lack of capacity, because this is indeed a major problem. We need to address a lot more issues of environmental crimes. Perceptually, in Tanzania, they're not seen as major crimes, but they are major crimes in my eyes. And actually, what we're even beginning to see is money laundering using natural resources. And it's something we'll talk about on the sideline, but we're following it up very, very closely. We need to continue to apply pressure to make these things happen, and especially through research and advocacy work, and also strive for good policies to be implemented. It's one issue having the policies in place, but if they're not implemented, it's as good as not having them. But also the bad ones revised. I'll end up there for today.